It's trading season, baby. Sell high, buy low. Let's get after it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am your host, Steele Roden. Been doing this for 8-9 months now at this point. My co-host, Flip Livingstone, is feeling a little bit under the weather, so flying solo once again. And look, if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for checking us out. Make sure you hit the subscribe. Make sure you follow us. You'll get all the latest episodes Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And like you heard off the top, we're doing a little buy low, sell high on some fantasy players that are either really unproductive so far to start the season, but should be turning it around and helping their team be a lot more productive than they have been, or selling high on some players that have over-projected themselves and are playing out of their mind practically and should fall off in the middle and to the end stages of this NHL season. I know we are still in the first couple, if not the third week now of the NHL season, but this is what we have to talk about. This is what we have to discuss, digest, and dig through to see which guys are able to sell high and which guys are able to buy low. And I'm going to start off with a couple of the buy low players that I think you can get for pretty cheap out there if you want to make a couple of trades. The first one being Filip Forsberg from the Nashville Predators. Honestly, it's been a rather disappointing start for the Predators to start this season. You know, after winning both of those games in the Global Series against the San Jose Sharks, so they started the season with 2 wins. Since then, they have lost their next 5 games in a row, one of them being in overtime. So they're up to 5 points on the season, but 5 points in 7 games played is not good enough. Honestly, it's not just Filip Forsberg. A lot of their stars have been, pretty much invisible out there to start the season. Roman Josi being the number one guy who has pretty much been invisible. He's getting shots on net. He's doing everything right. Not everything right, but he's doing a lot right still. But he only has 1 assist so far in the first 7 games. He's a -6 as well. So not getting a lot of production from their star guys. Roman Josi, Filip Forsberg only has 4 points. Nichushkin only has 4 points. Ryan Johansson only has 4 points. It's actually Mikael Granlund and Nino Niederreiter leading the team. Granlund only having 6 assists, and Nino Niederreiter have 5 points for him with his new club as well. But we're staying on the topic and the player of Filip Forsberg for this buy low segment right now. Like I said, 2 goals, only 4 points for Forsberg so far to start the season. He's a -5. So if you've got him on your fantasy team, which I in fact do, he is one of those guys that I would think is a player to buy low right now. 4 points, -5, only 21 shots, 9 hits, 2 blocks. So the other stats right there are pretty good, actually. 21 shots, 9 hits, 2 blocks. So he's still getting some sort of production outside of just scoring goals and power play points and assists, which is nice to see. But, they got absolutely smoked by the Dallas Stars, not once, but twice, actually. They lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They lost to the Philadelphia Flyers. Those are 3 teams, in my opinion, that the Nashville Predators should not be losing to. The Dallas Stars, obviously, obviously a little bit of a tier up than the Flyers and Blue Jackets, and where I think they're projected to finish at the end of the season. But it's been a rough start other than those 2 games in the Global Series for the Nashville Predators. And we know this team is a playoff team. They've made it to the postseason the last 8 years in a row. Ever since they made it to the Cup Finals, it pretty much just seems that they're the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Western Conference at this point. They pretty much make the playoffs and bounce, get kicked out in the first round, it seems like. But they are a playoff team nonetheless. But like I said, Forsberg, Duchesne, Johansson, Roman Josi, those guys have not been playing well in the month of October. They should be turning it around quick in the month of November and for the rest of the season. Forsberg had 84 points last year, and it's most likely he's not going to get up to that point because that was his career high so far. But 70, 75 points is very much possible for a guy of Forsberg's caliber. So I think buying Filip Forsberg at a low price right now, while he's having a little bit of a slow start, would be great for any fantasy team. The next guy, actually, we're staying in the Western Conference, and this one might be a little bit of a hard sell for a lot of people to take a chance on this guy, but Thatcher Demko of the Vancouver Canucks. And there's no denying that the Vancouver Canucks have been the worst team so far to start the season, still have yet to win a game. They lost last night to the Hurricanes 3-2. Shout out to my lock of the night. The Hurricanes take that one on the money line. That was my lock of the night yesterday for yesterday's bet. But again, Vancouver Canucks have been the worst team in the NHL. It's a huge storyline right now. We're only 2 weeks into the season, and people are already talking about blowing this team up. Do they go for another rebuild? What are you doing with JT Miller? What's going on with Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson, the play and productivity on a lot of their players? And for me, centered around Thatcher Demko, who has pretty much been just absolutely atrocious to start the season as well. One of those goalies that I actually had in the race for the Vezina Trophy at the end of the season. It doesn't look like that's going to be coming his way anytime soon. But nonetheless, Demko is still a fantastic goalie, even though the numbers are very poor right now. And like I said, it's not just Demko that's the problem right now. It's the entire team. The entire team has been absolutely awful. JT Miller taking too many risks at the offensive blue line. Quinn Hughes being overplayed. He's actually out with injury right now, but it's just day to day. The rest of the D core has just, again, been abysmal to start the season as well, leaving Thatcher Demko out to dry. But yet again, he is part of the problem, not all of the problem. He's had some poor play so far as well, unlucky bounces, and everything that could be going wrong for Thatcher Demko and the Vancouver Canucks is going wrong for them. And that's just the case that we have at hand here. It's just been a terrible start. There's no other way to put it. It's either, look, I know there's 7 games in the season right now, 6 games maybe, but it's been absolutely atrocious. But Demko, he's coming off a career year last year, .915 save percentage, 2.72 goals against average with a 33-22-7 record just last year. He almost helped his team make it to the playoffs. He's 26 years old, so he's just getting into his prime right now as well. And he's just, again, he's one of those goalies that I do really like, but it's just been a very bad start for the Vancouver Canucks. And eventually they're going to have to get their first win. And once they do, that's usually when things start to turn around for a team. When someone gets that first goal, the monkey off their back, you haven't scored for a while or you haven't won for a while. Usually once you get that first win or just that win in general, things start to turn around pretty quickly. But hey, for the Vancouver Canucks, it could be a bust season for them, and they just go all in for Connor Bedard next year with the first overall pick if they were to get it. But those are my two players that I think you should be buying at a low price right now. Thatcher Demko, again, he's playing really bad. Whoever has him on their fantasy team is probably looking to trade or just put him on the waiver block because he's just been that bad if there are any goalies available. But if you can afford to lose a defenseman or a forward to upgrade your goalies in this department, Demko will be turning it around very, very quickly. I do believe that, as well as Filip Forsberg, only 4 points to start the season in 7 games. Those are the two guys that I'm looking at for the buying low segment. But what you should be looking at for placing your bets, that is betonline.net. They are your number one source for betting football and the start of the NBA season, as we're in full swing for that as well. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every single game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's also the fastest and easiest way to check in on other sports as well and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. Bet online, where the game starts. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, go check out Game to Game NHL, every moment, every performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers all games from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On hosts can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So go check them out. Make sure if you're listening and tuning in for today's episode, you follow and subscribe to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast channel as well. Flip and I really do appreciate all the love and support out there. We're getting a ton of messages, a ton of comments left on the YouTube channel and in our Twitter DMs. We're getting back to them as soon as possible. And we really do love connecting with our listeners out there. So if you have any questions, if you want to just communicate about how your fantasy team is going, let us know. We would love to converse with all of you guys out there. Now, we finished with the buying low. Let's talk about selling high on some players that are just playing out of their mind, to say the least, to start this season. First guy I have in mind, and maybe if you have him, you're probably thinking, Steele, what are you doing including this player in this list? Listen, Valeri Nichushkin for the Colorado Avalanche has been playing out of his mind. He's been stellar since the absence of Gabriel Landeskog, who, again, will be out for another 2.5 months at this point, maybe even longer after undergoing knee surgery once again. Nichushkin, 5 goals, 11 points in 5 games to start the season. He's been an absolute beast ever since he's gotten to the Avalanche organization. And, I got to give a shout out to Joe Sakic, head coach Jared Bednar. They have done an absolute fantastic job developing Nichushkin into the player that he is today, a two-way forward who had some votings in the Selke last year as well, who just looks like an all-around better player than when he was playing for the Dallas Stars. They've done a fantastic job, so I have to give a shout-out to them. But Nichushkin, again, 5 goals, 11 points in 5 games. He's got a shooting percentage right now at 28.6%. Now, that is very, very high. So that is going to fall off tremendously. And I'm not saying it's not going to stay there. I'm not saying that he isn't going to keep on scoring goals, but at 28.6%, that is very, very high. He's a 6'4", 210-pound player as well. And he only put up 90 hits last year. So I'm hoping as a big guy for the Avalanche, he can get a little bit more aggressive along with the skill set that we've seen so far over the last couple of years for the Avalanche too. But Nichushkin, I don't think he is going to remain at this shooting percentage. He's not going to be putting up this many points as well. 11 points in 5 games is very high. Like at this projection, it seems like he's going to be getting 90 points. And a guy for Nichushkin, I know he's playing with Rantanen, Makar, McKinnon, those guys, but I just can't see it. There's a lot of people out there. Someone left a comment on the YouTube channel. Would you trade Thomas Chabot for Valeri Nichushkin? If you're able to get Nichushkin for Thomas Chabot, absolutely do it. But I would not be trading Nichushkin for a Thomas Chabot type of player. I think you can get a lot more in return for him, and players that can really help your fantasy league as well. Nichushkin still, if he remains on your fantasy team, it's an absolute bonus too. Keep him there if you want, obviously, but I think you can sell a guy like Nichushkin at a very high price right now and get a lot in return. Another guy that I think you can get a lot in return for, that's Rasmus Dahlin from the Buffalo Sabres. This young buck has been absolutely killing it in his first 5 games for the Sabres this season. 5 goals. He's scored in every single game so far. He's got 8 points. He's a +8, 18 shots, 12 blocks, and 8 hits to start the season. Again, another high shooting percentage for Dahlin, 27.8% shooting percentage so far this season. And again, the same like Nichushkin, that is going to fall off very, very quickly. And just looking at what I've seen from the Buffalo Sabres the last few seasons, 3-4 seasons, the Sabres always seem to start October very, very hot. It's a very strong start for the Buffalo Sabres to start the season in October. Over the last 4 years, their overall record has been 24-9-5 in the month of October. Now, that quickly changes into November and for the rest of the season, as we've seen over the last 4 years, the Buffalo Sabres are at the bottom of their division, the bottom of the league usually. So in November, over the last 4 years, the Buffalo Sabres have been 20, 28, and 8. That's a quick turnaround from a 24, 9, and 5 month over the last 4 years in October. 20, 28, 20, 28, and 8 in the month of November. So it's obviously a quick turnaround. Things start to undress real quickly for the Buffalo Sabres, it seems like, after the first month, getting into November and December. And like I've stated before, I think Rasmus Dahlin can be a top 10 defenseman at the end of this year. I'm not saying that he's going to stop producing a ton of points out there, but the Buffalo Sabres are more likely to lose more games for the rest of the season as well. I've said this countless times again. Eric Comrie and Craig Anderson, they've played absolutely ridiculous to start the season for the Sabres as well. Those are two guys that I expect to have a little bit of a fall off in the month of November and December too. And that's a big reason why I'm saying sell high on Rasmus Dahlin. It's not that he's not going to continue putting up points. It's not that he's not going to put up blocks, hits, and shots like we've seen him do in the past. But the Buffalo Sabres are going to start losing more games than they win games. And when you're losing games, you're not necessarily putting up a ton of goals as well. So even though he's getting all of those other categories up, shots, blocks, and hits, I think the point production is going to fall off a little bit. But again, he is a tremendous defenseman, a young defenseman, and it could be up for debate if he is a top 10 defenseman at the end of the season. The next guy that I have in mind I really didn't know where to put him in this category, whether it's a, buy low or sell high type of guy, but I'll mention this guy real quick. New York Rangers defenseman Jacob Trouba. He's a guy that I love to have on my fantasy team every single season, not because of his point production, but it's everything else that he does. He's only got 2 assists so far in 6 games, which I think is a little low for Jacob Trouba. He's obviously not a high point getter out there in the league right now, but 16 shots, 16 blocks, and 23 hits. This guy puts his body on the line every single game. He's always out there looking to make a clean, fair, big hit. He's always there getting in front of shots. He's able to get pucks on net as well. And I really just like him for my fantasy team because he just adds that extra production in those other categories, whether it's plus minus, penalty minutes. If you're in the Banger League, then obviously hits and penalty minutes. But, on top of that, if he can put up 35, 40 points, which we've seen him do in the past, that's just an extra bonus for a guy like Jacob Trouba, that you're really solely just getting him for those hits, blocks, and shots on net. But again, only 2 assists to start the season. I think you can buy him at a recently low price, something that can get a fair trade that can make both partners or both managers, whoever is involved in this trade, feel happy with what they get in return. And what you should feel happy with and what you should feel safe with is Simply Safe. The numbers don't lie here. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe home security to protect their home. You don't earn that trust of that many people without doing something right. And I know this firsthand. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know this firsthand because I have Simply Safe at my home, back in Ontario. I also have it for my apartment here in Vancouver as well. They protect you with cutting edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month for free. Yes, that is right. Get your first month for free after signing up with the interactive monitoring plan. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. Simply Safe, there's no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode. Let's get after it with big time bets, where the money's made. I have quickly turned things around over the weekend and Thursday and Friday of last week, also Monday this week. Things are starting to turn around here, making the big bucks, and that's what we do in big time bets. Wednesday night, there's only 3 games on the board. I'm only staying with 2 of them, with 2 of those games, because I've got 2 bets from the same game. My first bet, anytime point from Vladimir Tarasenko against the Edmonton Oilers. That is my first bet. It's not my lock of the night. Tarasenko, I said this last year when we were doing our fantasy drafts, that he was coming back with a vengeance. He was coming back to take rightfully what was his for the St. Louis Blues and be that top dog again. And that's exactly what he did. He came back from that shoulder surgery in the offseason, after requesting the trade. He had the surgery. He came back and had a dog mentality, and he put up a ton of points. And that's what he's doing again. He's coming back to where he left off last season. He's got 6 points in 4 games for the St. Louis Blues so far. I think they played the least amount of games to start the season of any team. But anytime point from Vladimir Tarasenko against the Edmonton Oilers. He had a point against them in their 2-0 win earlier to start the season as well. So the Blues have already won, and that's where I'm going with my second pick. The Blues have already won against the Oilers. I'm taking the Blues on the money line against the Edmonton Oilers as well. I am just very scared of Jack Campbell in net. And, as of right now, while I'm recording this, I don't know if he'll be starting this game, but I'm assuming he is. And he has not been great to start the season. I really did think, I know there's a lot of hockey left, but when you go from a goalie from Mike Smith to Jack Campbell, you expect a little bit more of a certainty when you get him in the crease. And he has just not been certain. He's not been confident. His game has been absolutely bad. I watched the Flames Oilers game on the 15th of October. It was 4-1 Flames before I could even sit down and crack open my beer. He's just been absolutely terrible. So I'm taking the Blues on the money line. They shut them out last week or 2 weeks ago. That is the second pick of the night. My lock of the night, though, I'm taking the Rangers on the money line against the New York Islanders. It is a back-to-back game for the Rangers. They played the Colorado Avalanche the day before. This is on the road for them, but again, it's in New York, whatever. It's on Long Island. Rangers on the money line. I'm really hoping Halak can be a lot better than what we've seen from him in the 2 games that he has played so far this season. But I think the Rangers are just way better than the New York Islanders. For me, and for a lot of people out there, that is not a question that needs to be beaten down or answered a lot because, yes, the Rangers are the better team. So again, 3 picks. Anytime point from Vladimir Tarasenko. Blues on the money line against the Edmonton Oilers, and the Rangers on the money line for my lock of the night against the New York Islanders. My overall record so far, we're getting back into position. Things are turning around. My overall record is 15-18-0. My lock of the night record is 6-5-0. So turning it around over the weekend, turning it around on Monday with 2 out of 3 bets hitting for myself. The Maple Leafs, unfortunately, took a little bit of a loss there. They just played absolutely brutal Monday night to against the Vegas Golden Knights. Nonetheless, we're turning the bets around. Hopefully, we're turning the bets around for you as well. We're making you some money out there. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your next listen, though, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day as well. Locked On Sports Today podcast. Please go check them out. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Just like this podcast right here. Hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. We appreciate all the love out there. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's podcast with just myself, your host, Steele Roden. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. Hopefully you can get some money back in return, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.